Hello there and good day. This is Big Hoss. We are covering live the House meeting on Senate Bill 43, the bill that
and in this bill, we are addressing this because gun barrels live outside of this sphere of these two bills. Gun barrels are the one part of 3D printing that are not able to be printed generally during 3D printing. And so our bill proposes that they be sold by federal firearm dealers, FFLs, and therefore that the purchase of a gun barrel jumps through the same procedures or goes through the same procedures that we've put in place over a series of years and bills to make common sense gun violence prevention measures. And I just want to highlight the prevalence of what we have seen in the spike when the increase in ghost guns and how that correlated to the increased use of ghost guns in suicide. And so a lot of our work in gun violence prevention, we're trying to get at that nexus between access to a firearm and our suicide rates. And that's why we did the 3-day waiting period. There's a cooling off period. That's why we put in place our extreme risk protection orders, trying to get at that easy access to firearms, because we know when someone attempts suicide, the access to a firearm and the opportunity to put some barriers between that access and the moment when the person wants to attempt suicide can be absolutely critical, and it can be a matter of minutes. Even studies have even shown that if it takes over 15 minutes to access the means to suicide, there's a decrease in the eventuation of that suicide. So that's what we're trying to do in this bill, and we ask for an aye vote.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, committee, for hearing our bill today. I appreciate your work today. I know it will be an important conversation today. I think it's important just to add on to what my co-prime sponsor was saying. And first of all, I'm always honored to join her on any bill, but also especially on gun violence prevention bills. This is something that we both care very deeply about, and she has been a leader on in this work for so many years. So I am honored to be a part of this bill. I think it's important to make sure that folks understand that the bill does not ban firearm barrels. It doesn't prevent law-abiding Coloradans from owning or replacing them. It's really just about common sense regulations to ensure that firearm barrels are purchased through federally licensed dealers, and that there's a clear record that is maintained for law enforcement purposes. By requiring the in-person sales and maintaining basic purchase records, we're closing this loophole, as my co-prime sponsor mentioned, that allows dangerous firearms to be assembled anonymously. The bill balances public safety with responsible gun ownership, ensuring that hobbyists, collectors, and firearm owners can continue to legally purchase and replace barrels without unnecessary restrictions. I'll point out that the bill includes thoughtful exemptions for the military, government, and licensed collectors. So it's really about responsible oversight, traceability, not banning lawful gun ownership. I think it's also important to recognize that it does not require gun barrels to be serialized necessarily. It is really just about making sure that there are sort of regulated checkpoints, regulated points of sale, so that we can make sure that we are dealing with the threat to public safety that sort of ghost guns and their like would place on our communities. So with that, we ask for an aye vote.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions for our bill sponsors? Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have quite a few questions for you guys. So on page 3 of the re-engrossed version, firearm barrel is defined to mean the tube through which a projectile or shot charge is fired. That definition goes on to say what that may include, but it doesn't give, in the description after that statement, it doesn't give any sort of must include type language. And include is, in a general construction sense, understood to be include but not limited to. And so I am just curious if your intention is to cover straws.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for that question, Representative Luck. I really
That's funny
appreciate
right there. Cover straws.
your engagement on this
Yeah.
bill and the thoughtful way that you approach legislation. The short answer is no. We obviously believe that to be regulated under this law, an item must be at least one of two things. One, it must be an article that has reached a stage of manufacture where it may be readily completed or assembled for use as a firearm barrel. And two, it must be an article that is marketed to the public as a firearm barrel. So not straws, not pipes, normal pipes that you would find at the hardware store. And the reason for that is that, it's about the intent of the manufacturer. So a standard metal tube at a hardware store is intended for plumbing, construction, DIY use. It is not intended for
DIY.
Rifle,
that means you can make your own
It
barrel.
does not have things like rifling or a chamber or specific threading.
It doesn't need rifle.
It is also not marketed that way. And there is a particular case law that addresses this. In particular, the Colorado Supreme Court addressed this issue in 2020 in a case by the Rocky Mountain Gun Owners versus Polis. And the central lesson from that case was exactly what I'm talking about, that intent, manufacturing, and the exclusion of integrated parts in particular really matters as to whether this kind of a bill would apply.
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And because, Madam Chair, I have a couple of questions, would it be all right with you if I just dialogue?
Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, maybe you can ask a couple and then we'll let somebody else ask questions and we'll come back to you. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay,
Do
perfect.
you want me to dialogue or do you?
Why don't you ask two questions and then we'll let someone else take a crack.
Fantastic. Thank you, Madam Chair. So would you be interested in just adding clarity to that first sentence of the definition? Because while you say includes, it doesn't preclude any other understanding of a projectile or shot charge tube that can engage in a projectile shot charge. So just to avoid any spit wad or potato launcher or circus clown confusion, perhaps it could say something to the effect of firearm barrel means the tube through which a projectile or shot charge is fired from a firearm or something of that. So to narrow that, would that be something you all would be willing to work on for seconds?
Representative Froelich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Luck. We feel that because the bill specifically says that these are items marketed to the public as a firearm barrel, that those descriptions that you have described are not marketed to as firearm barrels. And so our language clarifying that it has to be marketed as a firearm barrel to the public covers us in what you are suggesting.
Some people
And I
believe a
appreciate that,
potato
Rep.
gun
Froelich.
might be
In
a gun.
talking
'Cause it's
with
a gun.
another attorney, I do think that the way it is listed in that second sentence, a firearm barrel includes, it's not limited to. And so to be able to limit in the first, because it's not an extensive, unless you wanted to add in a firearm barrel includes and is limited to these things, this may be a better way to do it, but that's just something to consider.
Representative Froelich, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Luck. We do have a firearms expert coming to testify, so maybe they can offer clarification on that.
Okay.
And I will make sure that your question gets answered by that person.
Wonderful, thank you. My second question for now is as relates to intent to sell. So I am
I'm worried
concerned
about the
because,
firearm
for
expert
instance,
they
if
claim.
you're a competitive shooter, many will change their barrels every 1,500 to 5,000 rounds, let's say. So they go through barrels quite frequently. And I can imagine that some have quite a stash of firearm barrels within their homes. And so I'm just wondering if there would be an appetite to have an amendment that would narrow the intent to sell to say something to the effect of the presence of, you know, a cache of these is not alone constituting evidence for an intent to sell.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I would have to talk with you more about what your intent there is, Representative Luck, but I mean, I can tell you that obviously there's nothing in this bill that would prevent someone from replacing their barrel. And I think that if a barrel has been bought prior to this legislation, I don't know that that necessarily would be covered either. So the kind of sport shooting that you were talking about, I don't know that that anything is precluded in this bill from that.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Espinoza and then Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've raised these questions outside of the hearing with sponsors. Just want to put it on the record for some clarification that would be helpful for me. The first is, and this is, let me put on my Judiciary Committee hat and my law professor hat and my Statutory Revision Committee hat to say, I'm really looking strongly at legislation that's using this term that no longer exists in statute of unclassified misdemeanor. So I'd ask you to redefine that throughout the statute and make a choice on whether it's a first-degree misdemeanor or a second-degree murder misdemeanor. And an unclassified used to be treated semi like a petty theft, but in 2021, we eliminated that term from our legislation. And so I'd like to ask you to decide how you want to deal with that and the civil infraction.
Representative Froelich.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Rep. Espinosa, for bringing those concerns to us previously. So we want to make clear to committee that there are two different situations here. One is the purchase of the unlawful purchase of a barrel. That is a civil infraction. The unlawful sale gets you into misdemeanor territory. The drafter has said that we standardly use, and we have used in other GVP legislation. I understand that it's not liked by the folks in Statutory Review Committee, but unclassified misdemeanor, so that there's more discretion and they can decide, because if misdemeanor 1 and 2 have specific number of days. When you are charged with a misdemeanor 1 and 2. And if you say unclassified misdemeanor, you can have more flexibility in the number of days. Specifically, they did not want folks spending particularly long 6 months in jail, which is required in a class 1 misdemeanor, but you can do the fine or the jail, and they wanted more flexibility through the word unclassified misdemeanor.
Representative Espinoza.
I would suggest that that's not appropriate term, because unclassified misdemeanor was a term of art that was previously in our statute. It does not lead to the description that you just indicated. And so I would again ask you to look at this as this bill moves forward, and we can have more discussions about that. And I understand the flexibility you're talking about, but that would be more in the range of what you said with regard to the civil infraction rather than misdemeanor. And I would just note that even in the civil infraction, we've inconsistently used that through the statute. And so it's important to clarify the level of what you're talking about in a civil infraction, because when we omitted unclassified misdemeanor in the statute, we did allow for and create this term of the civil infraction, which I think is leading to the kind of discretion that you're talking about. but there is no firm definition or penalty with a civil infraction. And it's usually, and in the absence of these things being defined in the statute, then there's an issue. So the former unclassified misdemeanor, I just did some review with the public defenders before I came in, did allow for that kind of flexibility potentially, but there's also a way to do that in another way. And I'll be happy to work with you outside of committee, but I did just want to put that on the record. I did have one more question, if I may, Madam Chair.
Before we take your question, let's give them an opportunity to respond. Representative Brown.
Yeah, sure. I think I speak on behalf of my co-prime sponsor and myself when I'd say we'd be happy to work with you, Rep. Espinosa. You obviously have a level of expertise that I don't have, and certainly appreciate the concerns that you're raising forward. So, happy to continue those conversations going forward.
And I do want to note that the
OLS, if it seems like if there's a misunderstanding of how that would play out in the gun space versus maybe the criminal space, but I think these are terms of art we need to clarify, maybe even at a higher level. So that would not be necessary today, Madam Chair.
Okay,
Thank you.
Go ahead and proceed with your last question.
And I'm going to throw two things in. Just one thing, I know that you're looking at an amendment to add the gunsmithing school back in, so I appreciate that. And then I did just want to give you an opportunity on the record to discuss whether there's any inconsistency on bottom of page 5 and top of page 6 in subsection F with regard to the transfer of weapons. Because there is also in subsection A, the transfer between family members. And I guess I'm just trying to figure out how in an estate transfer, which is referred to in subsection F, that would happen and how that would be enforced.
Representative Froelich.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Espinosa, for the question. It's our understanding the way it's written, and I understand there's a precision that you bring to this and Representative Luck bring to this that we appreciate and are willing to make sure we get right. So it's our understanding that as outlined in the bill, if you are transferring through executor or administrator as the process of a will, you're fine. If it's in a trust and the trust is doing a mass transfer of these barrels, then you have to go through an FFL. So it's the trust created in a will, a trust that has to contract with an FFL to do that transfer on mass. But if it's just through a regular will and there hasn't been a trust established and you're not doing a big behest, then it's the usual. And then for committee to understand that a municipality doing a buyback program also doesn't have to go through an FFL. That's what that section following that is.
Representative Brooks.
Sure, thank you. I have two, if that's okay, and it'll be very quick.
Yeah, if you can just ask them one at a time.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Will do. Absolutely. Sponsors, I grew up in an era where some of my agricultural family members would have guns from way back from the day when gunpowder used to be corrosive, and now thanks to advancements, it's not. But if you didn't, just as a quick background, if you didn't clean your gun right away after using it, I mean, the whole barrel would just rot out. So this is actually very similar to a question that my colleague from Fremont County had asked. Hers was more along the lines of barrels that are currently owned already that would the ownership precede the potential onset of this law. I'm just thinking that for, like, let's say a family heirloom item that you're wanting to restore and you want to swap out the barrel to something because it's been damaged even through just a regular use, why would we want to trigger this level of kind of state oversight for something that would be fairly routine just to be able to replace a damaged barrel?
Representative Brown.
I mean, first of all, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Brooks, for your question. I mean, I certainly understand your concern and where you're coming from, and I think to your point, barrels do need to be replaced on a fair, at a somewhat of regular clip here. Depends on the kind of rifle it is and how often it gets shot. I know in my family that the rifles that get used, I don't know that we've ever had to replace the barrel, but to your point, technology has changed. I will say that I think it's a matter of understanding sort of what kind of, what are the benefits to public safety that we are gaining here. It's a really important thing that we are able to make sure that firearms are not, falling into the wrong hands, and that we are protecting our communities from ghost guns. And so for me, it's a small inconvenience in the nature of greater public safety gains.
I still don't understand why does ghost guns have to do with
Thank you,
firearms.
Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Brooks. What the bill contemplates and what we're trying to get after is that there's 3D printing of firearms, which we have addressed through Ghost Gun Bill and through our recently passed 3D printing. You're still going to need a barrel. So to put barrels into FFLs to make sure that you're not meeting someone in the Walmart parking lot to exchange barrels outside of an FFL. You're not ordering online to complete your ghost gun. So it's just closing that barrel loophole so that you are purchasing your barrel through an FFL.
There's no barrel
And it doesn't
loophole.
matter how many times you go to the FFL, how many barrels you want to replace. Ownership of a barrel is not contemplated as any kind of penalty in this. If you're a sports shooter, and we have someone who contacted us who said, I go through hundreds of these in a year.
Mhm.
Good for you. You're having a great time at the range or whatever you're doing. That's a lawful exercise. But you didn't make a ghost gun or acquire a ghost gun, and now you need a barrel, and you're meeting someone you contacted through Facebook Marketplace, or you're ordering it online to complete this purchase, which we feel should be done through an FFL.
Representative Brooks.
Sure, thank you. Different subject line. I just would ask for some clarification. In your opening remarks, you had mentioned that there is an exemption currently for members of the military. I was looking at the re-engrossed version, page 5, 16, 17, line 16, 17, and what I'm reading there is that it's an exemption for transfer of a firearm barrel to the United States military. What I understand is that there perhaps may have been a Senate amendment run but failed that would have specifically said to an active or former member of the United States Armed Forces. So I was wondering if you could please clarify that for me.
Representative.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Brooks. We typically, on all of our gun violence prevention bills, get an amendment that says exempt all military, current or former, for every single thing that we run. And it's just, these are folks who deserve to be protected as well. These are folks who are also at an alarming rate contemplating suicide. And so all of our gun violence prevention measures, our 3-day waiting period, ERPO, this bill, we do not like to extend so broadly an exemption, because we feel those are our neighbors as well and deserve to be protected by the legislation that we're running.
There's no.
All right, Representative Locke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm wondering if you guys foresee this being having a chilling effect on lawful ownership. Do you anticipate that the registration and recording requirements under this bill will lead certain folks to not actually change out barrels?
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't think so. Personally, first of all, there's no registry that is contemplated here. This is just a normal record that is already being kept, similar to what is being kept for if you purchase a firearm through an FFL. I don't believe that there'd be any sort of chilling effect here, other than the fact that it makes sure that that the sale of these particular elements of a firearm are going through licensed dealers. So no, I guess that was a really long way of saying no. Sorry about that.
No worries. I appreciate it, because it leads me to a follow-up question, if I may.
Sure, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My follow-up question is, while you're saying that it's not creating a registry, but the FFL does have to fill out a form with a lot of personally identifiable information we don't even require for voting, and then put that information in a filing cabinet for review for 5 years. And so at any time, it could be translated into a registry of sorts, or law enforcement could required to see that, right? The people who monitor the state firearm licenses, protocols, and compliance. So while not strictly speaking, it being added into some database at this point, we have had conversations related to creating a statewide database, even in this committee this year. And so that's contemplated for potential, but there are those who are concerned about allowing the government to know anything about what they own, not because they're doing anything nefarious, but because they have significant concerns about where that information will land, who will have access to it, and what they will do with it. And so
We have the right to a privacy, especially from the government.
how do we
You know,
protect those
NSA is
folks,
not
the people who are
following
doing this?
that,
I mean,
but
I
still,
assume the
we have a
person
right
who
to privacy.
contacted about hundreds of barrels is concerned about having to do this, possibly for such a reason. So how do we help safeguard our law-abiding folks from any sort of invasion of privacy?
Representative Froelich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Luck. I think in all of the work that we do in gun violence prevention, we work closely with law enforcement. You won't see law enforcement, particularly on this bill, which we have had some 2A sheriffs come previously on other GVP bills. But in this case, ghost guns are a problem for law enforcement. And this is a way to help law enforcement with their investigations involving ghost guns. They are, if they recover that on a scene and they can find out how the ghost gun relates to a barrel purchase, that's in law enforcement purview. We don't generally have a problem coordinating with law enforcement and doing what they ask for us to do to help their investigations. So I think that's a definitely concern from that sector that you're expressing. But in our work, we tend to try to help law enforcement with their investigations in terms of gun violence.
Last question.
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just as a follow-up to that, thank you, Rep. Froelich. So with respect to the laws that have already been passed in this, right, ghost gun serializing and no 3D printing, obviously that, I don't even know that the governor has signed that particular bill yet, but with respect to the serializing, are you suggesting that law enforcement is saying that that bill has been insufficient, that in fact outlawing ghost guns has not resulted in ghost guns not being created or used?
Representative Froelich.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We've seen a tremendous reduction after ghost gun laws go into effect, tremendous reduction in the use of ghost guns in crimes as a result of ghost gun legislation. But at the same time, the identification of this loophole related to gun barrels. And so with the closing of this loophole, we hope to see a further reduction. And of course, our goal is
There
at the
is
end,
no
so we don't have
loophole.
to keep coming
What the
back
hell?
to do this stuff. And we can really look forward to a future where we're not losing as many folks in our state to suicide by firearm or gun violence in our communities.
Representative Bottoms.
Thank you, Chair. Representative Froelich, can you give me a place where I can look up that the use of ghost guns went down anywhere?
Representative Froelich.
I'm happy to give you the reference piece, but and it is in the recovery of ghost guns at crime scenes. So that's what that statistic comes from. And then there are some public health statistics that I can also share with you on the use of ghost guns in suicide decline. And so I will make sure you get them before the end of the hearing.
Any further questions? Seeing none, we're going to move into witness testimony.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Thank you very much. We passed out an amendment, and I just want to preview that that's from the gunsmith folks. We will deal with that during the amendment phase, but you have it in front of you for the next little while to peruse. And we appreciate your attention to that at a later time.
Okay, perfect. And I have a number of folks signed up in support as well as in opposition, and two signed up in either a neutral or amend position. Is it your preference that we would start with a support panel, hear the opposition, and then end with your neutral amend and then your final support panel? Okay, perfect. We will proceed with that. As we're getting started with testimony, I just want to remind everybody that we will be wrapping comments at 2 minutes. And 2 minutes again means 2 minutes. And so we're not allowing committee members to ask you to finish your testimony. Props are not allowed. If you've got a t-shirt with something on it, that's no big deal. And ask that you be respectful of committee members and focus your comments to the content of the bill. We will also, once we've wrapped up with the panel, allow for up to 5 minutes of questions, alternating as best as we can between parties. So with that, we'll start with our first panel, Amanda Cox, Steve Lindley, Stephanie Greenberg, David Carnes, and Kimberly Carroll. Are you perhaps Stephanie Wilcox? Amanda Wilcox.
Amanda
I'm so sorry.
Wilcox.
Okay, perfect. Welcome to the committee. The floor is yours for 2 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Amanda Wilcox, and I'm here today on behalf of Brady, Colorado, an organization working to prevent firearm crime, injury, and death. You may remember my testimony from last week, in which I told you of my daughter's death due to a gun in dangerous hands. I miss my daughter every single day. There's broad consensus that those who, based on their condition or past behavior, are at risk of acts of violence should not have access to firearms. To that end, firearm transfers in Colorado are subject to background checks and other regulations. Moreover, in response to the growing threat of ghost guns, our state prohibited unserialized or unfinished frames and receivers in 2023. But with the regulation of frames and receivers in place, criminals and gun traffickers have pivoted away from ghost gun parts and kits towards 3D printing in order to circumvent our state's firearm laws. However, a firearm barrel is difficult to reproduce via 3D printing, as extreme pressures generated inside the barrel during firing would make the gun unsafe, unreliable, and prone to failure. Consequently, near all 3D printed firearms must rely on industry-made barrels that can now be purchased online or in store without any regulation. This enables individuals who are prohibited from owning firearms or who intend to manufacture and sell untraceable illegal guns to easily acquire a barrel and attach it to a 3D printed gun mechanism. The provisions in SB 43 will deter those seeking to illegally manufacture firearms and will enhance public safety by reducing the availability of 3D printed firearms to youth, criminals, and gun traffickers. I ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wilcox. Please hold for questions. We're going to go online now to Steve Lindley. Welcome. Please come off mute. Tell us who you are, and the floor is yours for 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. My name is Steve Lindley, and I'm a 28-year law enforcement veteran and former chief of the California Department of Justice Bureau of Firearms. I'm here on behalf of Brady and in support of Senate Bill 43. Over the past decade, Colorado, along with the rest of the nation, has faced an epidemic from the firearm industry flooding our communities with ghost guns. Products that can be built without a background check, serial numbers, or other safety requirements. Colorado, like many other states, took action on those ghost guns. Yet, once again, the firearm industry shifted its business practice to consumer-grade 3D dimensional manufacturing of ghost guns. However, one major component of a firearm, its barrel, is challenging to manufacture. Although it's technically possible to 3D print a firearm barrel, its functionality and durability are extremely limited, making it dangerous for the end user. A 3D printed firearm barrel is more likely to fail, causing significant damage to the firearm and injuring the shooter. As such, nearly all 3D printed firearms must be equipped with a modern industrial manufactured firearm barrel. This bill simply requires that Colorado citizens seeking to purchase or transfer a firearm barrel conduct the transaction in person through a licensed firearm dealer. This simple action protects the community and law enforcement from illegal firearms and the criminals seeking to use them. This will not add to the cost of purchasing a firearm and will require it to simply be done through an FFL. In truth, this will assist the FFL's business by producing more traffic and is a cost-effective and simple deterrent to 3D printed manufactured firearms and ghost guns. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and I ask for your support.
Thank you very much. I'll also
This has
call
nothing to
Ms.
do with
Eileen
ghost
McCarron.
guns.
I believe you're here in person if you'd like to join the panel. Let's go now to Stephanie Greenberg.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephanie Greenberg, and I'm a volunteer with Colorado Faith Communities United to End Gun Violence. We ask for a yes vote on SBO 43. Most parts needed to build a fully functional firearm can now be produced with a 3D printer, with one notable exception, the firearm barrel. As a result, those who want to assemble ghost guns are purchasing manufactured barrels and attaching them to 3D printed guns. These barrels are entirely unregulated and can be purchased online or in stores without any restriction, not even a background check, enabling those who are prohibited from owning guns to easily acquire an essential firearm component. Regulating professionally manufactured barrels will create a barrier to the illegal production of 3D printed firearms by requiring that anyone who seeks to purchase a barrel must do so in person through a federally licensed firearms dealer and undergo a background check. As Representative Froelich indicated, Colorado did pass a law regulating ghost guns in 2023 that banned the possession and sale of unserialized guns and the manufacture of certain unserialized gun parts like frames or receivers. However, the use of 3D printers instead of kits has dramatically increased, once again circumventing most state and federal firearm regulations and requiring new regulations. As has been mentioned, HB 261143 has passed through the House and it's now in the Senate, and it closes many of the loopholes in the 2023 law. SBO 43 would close yet another important loophole in the 2023 law, that is the use of professionally manufactured firearm barrels in 3D printed ghost guns.
Thank you so much,
Lastly,
Ms.
this bill has
Greenberg.
no
Your
fiscal
time
note
has
and will
expired.
benefit Colorado's state taxpayers at no cost. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you, Ms. Greenberg. Let's go to Kimberly Carroll.
Hi, members of the community. Thank you for allowing me to speak publicly on SB 26043. I am speaking for myself and I urge you to pass this bill. Many of you have heard me testify before, so I hope I'm not being redundant, but I would like to remind you why I have chosen to get involved with gun violence safety legislation. My son lost one of his best friends to gun violence several years ago. He was shielding a friend from her ex. He saved her life, but he died. I decided then to do anything I could so that no other family had to go through what his friend's family went through. I then joined with Douglas County Sheriff Tony Spurlock and several other groups and helped to pass our ERPO law. The law to regulate the sale and transfer of barrels and the regulation of record keeping for such transfer is another tool the state has to continue to keep the citizens of Colorado safe. Just like any law that tries to keep the population safe, this law will hold buyers and sellers accountable for the sale or transfer of a gun barrel. FFLs, I would think, would welcome any law or record keeping requirement that helps law enforcement track where a barrel was sold or transferred. This can only help.
I can't wait till it's my turn to
in the catching
testify.
of
I'm gonna
criminals.
blow
I
all
also
these out of the
appreciate
water.
how this bill helps fill a gap as we try to keep up with the technology of 3D printed guns. This bill is a road bump that is common sense. Please pass this bill.
Thank you very much. And finally, on this panel, Ms. McCarron, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I am Eileen McCarron, and I'm speaking for Colorado Ceasefire Legislative Action in support of Senate Bill 43. In 2023, Colorado enacted a ghost gun ban, which has resulted in fewer ghost guns recovered at crime scenes. But unfortunately, it seems every time we endeavor to reduce gun violence by enacting reforms, there are those who are anxious to skirt the laws. In particular, individuals who cannot purchase a firearm because of criminal offenses or other prohibitive issues can generate firearms through the use of 3D printers. But as noted, a special problem for 3D printed guns is the firearm barrel, which must be made of more substantial material than plastic. Those wishing to create a safe and functional 3D gun will need to acquire separately the firearm barrel. To address the expanding use of 3D printed guns,
like they know what a ghost gun
the
is.
acquisition of the barrel must be conducted in person through an FFL. And the FFL will have to record information about the sales employee, the transferee, and the firearm. It additionally makes it unlawful for a non-FFL to possess a firearm barrel with the intent to sell or transfer it. The bill also requires that the transferee be at least 18 years of age, but existing law would make it that they must be 21 years of age, except for those in military or law enforcement. We have background checks for a reason. Currently, Colorado is seeing a significant drop in gun homicides, but more needs to be done to stop the activities of those interested in circumventing our laws and endangering public safety. Please vote yes.
Thank you very much. Members, what questions do you have? Representative Luck. And for our friends that may be virtual, please put yourself on mute.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is actually for Mr. Lindley. So you had raised the safety issues related to these barrels, and the final speaker also pointed to the fact that criminals are always looking to skirt laws. I'm wondering, on two sides of the safety coin, if you have any concern. On the one side of the safety side, or one side of the safety coin would be for those who are law-abiding citizens who are going to be resistant now to change out their barrels. When you are using a worn barrel, your accuracy is impacted. The worn barrel can provide a safety concern on both sides of the trigger, especially in a self-defense situation, because if your accuracy is not what it would otherwise be, then you could hurt someone by improper accuracy. So on that side of the coin, there could be some problems safety-wise. And on the other side, with criminals who are looking to skirt it, they could be trying to modify or adapt common items that are not covered under this bill. As the bill sponsor said, pipes you can find at the hardware store. And we know that those too provide a lot of risk because they're not built to withstand the pressure and could cause additional harm. And so I'm just wondering if you see any sort of safety issues with this particular bill in either of those categories.
Mr. Lindley?
Well, first, dealing with a law-abiding citizen that has worn out a firearm, the barrel on their firearm, I don't see a prohibition here from them going to a dealer to pick up that new barrel as compared to receiving it in the mail. There's a lot of public safety impact by making sure that that process is done in person. And if I do have a worn out barrel, going to an FFL in order to receive that new barrel really isn't a major inconvenience to where I would preclude purchasing that barrel. When it comes to using other items as a firearm barrel, that has been done most likely for centuries, but in more modern context, people build guns of all types of quality. And if they're using a plastic barrel or a modified tube or pipe, that really does pose more of a threat to the individual who is using that poorly manufactured firearm. But they're also probably doing that for more of a criminal activity. Therefore, this bill is being somewhat successful in ensuring that they're not having a modern firearm barrel in order to produce a firearm to kill somebody or themselves.
All right, I'm not seeing any more questions. Thank you all so much for your time and your testimony. We're going to move over to individuals signed up in opposition to the bill. I'll call Nephi Cole, Christopher McGee, Calvin Curtis, Missy Espinoza, Leslie Hollywood, and Michael White. And while we get some folks pulled up online, you're welcome to begin, sir. Please tell us who you are, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you very much. I'm Nephi Cole. I'm the Director of Government Relations and State Affairs for the National Shooting Sports Foundation, which is the Firearms Trade Association of America. I just wanted to start, and if you have questions, please ask me a lot after this. This is a very technical issue, but I think the most important thing you need to understand, there is no mechanism to make this bill work. There's no federal mechanism. There's no FFL mechanism. You can't track where these are made. You can't track where they're purchased. You can't track where they come from. There is no background check in this bill. That's a huge flaw. And there is no tracking mechanism in this bill. There's a huge flaw in that. You're going to hear people tell you that this is just like a bill from someplace else. It isn't. There's nothing like this in the United States. There never has been. In the US, we serialize receivers for a reason. No FFL has ever sold a ghost gun. We just don't. They all have serialization on them. And that's because you can't track these things without serialization. That's why serialization is required on every firearm that an FFL sells. That is why receivers are required under the Gun Control Act to have the requisite serialization on those receivers. There's no background check, as I mentioned in this, and there's no mechanism for completing a background check because what you're talking about is not a component. You're talking about a tube that is an unregulated item. There's significant interstate commerce issues associated with trying to, it just doesn't work. There's no regulatory mechanism. This is also a black hole for our dealers. There's no way for them to check and see if somebody can legally have or not have a gun in this bill. It just doesn't exist. And so they can't check and see who bought what from them. And then when they do sell something, you're asking them to keep paperwork that it's a nothing burger because there's no background check associated with it. And then it's a file cabinet that just becomes a black hole because it doesn't go anywhere. You find a gun built someplace. If I find a tire outside of a big old tire, where did the tire come from? What kind of car did it come off? What kind of car does it go on?
Thank you very much,
problematic.
Mr. Cole.
We'd
Your
encourage you to
time
defeat
has
this bill.
expired. Next up, Missy Espinoza.
Missy Espinoza, representing myself. Here we go again with another illegal bill, another bill with a zero fiscal note, straight up defrauding the citizens. There is literally zero reason for this bill, unless the reason is control, more control. And there's no such thing as ghost guns. There's firearms built by citizens, which has been a crucial part of our nation's history. And that alone makes this bill illegal based off of the Supreme Court decision you ignore every time. If you have respect for us citizens, you will kill this bill. But if you're all about that lobster back money, you'll continue to be the tyrants you are.
Tyrants.
All right, next, Mr. Kelvin Curtis.
She sounded, I will admit, sounded a little bit like a conspiracy theorist. But
good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee. My name is Kelvin Curtis, representing the National Rifle Association of America and the thousands of law-abiding Coloradans whose Second Amendment rights are once again under attack by Senate Bill 26043. This legislation constitutes a substantial overreach by equating an inert piece of metal, a firearm barrel, with a serialized firearm. By requiring that every transfer be conducted in person through a federal licensed dealer, this bill efficiently criminalizes the private secondary market and prohibits the common practice among law-abiding citizens of ordering replacement parts online for home delivery. Perhaps the most disturbing is the de facto registration that it creates. Firearm dealers will be compelled to record the residential address, telephone numbers, and specific make, model, and caliber for the firearms owned by our members, and stores this data for a period of 5 years. Law-abiding residents utilize these components for maintenance, competitive activities, and self-defense purposes. They should not be subjected to governmental surveillance when repairing their own property. We strongly advocate voting against Senate Bill 26043. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Michael White.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm here representing myself. I'm testifying against this bill. I have several issues, mainly some particularly with what the sponsor said. First, a lot of talk about ghost guns, but not a lot of talk about ghost guns, including unserialized firearms where the serial number has been scratched off, are oftentimes counted in these ghost gun numbers that they love to tout about the dangerousness of ghost guns. And those, there's no barrel purchase involved in that. I also have an issue that there's no enforcement of this bill. You can't backtrace who bought what barrel until you find who bought a barrel. And then now you can go to the gun stores and say, hey, you bought this barrel, where'd you buy it from? Unless you do like the ATF and you create a name searchable database with firearm numbers and firearm models, there's no way to actually backtrace and search these things. Along with that is the data issues. We claim that we're not creating a registry, but I heard the testimony on Ken DeGraff's bill, and law enforcement has no idea where they get their information from all these databases, and so we should trust them with more information is our thing. And then the fees. There's going to be a fee to transfer these from FFLs to people, and so you're just adding more fees to gun ownership and trying to prevent poor people from owning guns. And I think that's despicable above all things from a party who claims to be working for the working class. To just throw more and more and more fees on a constitutional right is it's shameful. So thank you.
All right, and last on this panel, Leslie Hollywood.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep, absolutely. Please proceed.
Good afternoon. My name is Leslie Hollywood, and I am the director of Rally for Our Rights. We're a nonpartisan gun rights advocacy organization, and I am speaking in opposition to this bill. I am going to dig into one of the biggest pieces that I see as a glaring issue is the fact that, and I know Nephi just touched on this, there is no mechanism for a background check written into this bill. The only similar legislation we have across this country is California, and California themselves wrote into the bill how to run a background check. This bill itself simply says that somebody who is prohibited from possessing, receiving, owning, or purchasing a firearm under state or federal law cannot purchase one of these. Nowhere in here do we address the fact that our background check system is actually under CRS 2433.5-424. And that specifically says that it is only legal to transfer a firearm as firearm is defined under federal law. If you go into federal law, you will find that firearm does not include barrel. There is no way for anybody to run a background check on a barrel purchase. An FFL simply cannot do it. And if we're going to say that they can somehow, without amending or revising our revised statutes around background checks, if we're going to say that these FFLs can suddenly start running background checks on whatever they want, then what happens next? Can somebody run a background check on the guy they're going to date next weekend? Because right now, the way that this is written, it absolutely does not cover any mechanism to run a background check at all. And that may be the intention. It may be that this bill is not supposed to actually run background checks, and these FFLs instead are just supposed to ask, are you legally allowed to own a gun? And somebody says, yeah, and they just sell it. But ultimately, the way the bill is written means that in the end, if they sell to a prohibited person, the FFL is on the hook. The liability falls back on them. They won't take this gamble.
Thank you
This
very
is gonna
much,
end
Ms.
bad.
Hollywood. Your
Firearm
time
barrel
has
sales in Colorado,
expired.
please vote no.
Thank you very much. Members, what questions do you have for this panel? Representative Bottoms.
This question is for the State Shooting Association. I forgot your name.
Nephi.
It's Nephi Cole, the National Shooting Sports Foundation.
Okay. We brought up already that there are, that the competitive shooting, you do have exchange of barrels. That's a pretty consistent thing. I've seen a couple of other things that are actually very common, very consistent that seem to be left out of this too. And one of the things that I've been involved with competitive shooting is you know, if somebody needs a magazine or something and you've got an extra, you hand them that if there's going to be multiple drop magazines or whatever. And so there is movement of parts from gun owners to gun owners in these things. They're not relatives. They're just people. Sometimes you don't even know them that well, but you're passing these things off. But something also I've seen is when you're trying to have a lower caliber for a younger kid to be able to shoot, and you switch out a barrel. It's a little more involved than that, but you switch out a barrel for that. I see that commonly, and that's very common. And also, you're not related to the person. It's just somebody that a bunch of guys are out shooting, and somebody will say, hey, well, why don't you lower this so that the younger kid will be more comfortable. And I like to start kids off shooting as young as possible, get them comfortable with the guns, and usually a 22 or something like that makes it easier. But what do? This bill makes that illegal. What do we do with that?
Mr. Cole.
Representative Bottoms, Madam Chair, members of the committee, while so the NSSF is the Firearms Trade Association of America, so we actually don't deal a lot with competitive shooting. I can talk, we deal with the manufacture and sale of firearms. I can talk a little bit about changeable barrel weapons, and so certainly there are certain types of firearms which are designed to have a barrel that can be swapped out. And those firearms, of course, like all firearms, the part of the firearm that is registered, the part of the firearm that is tracked and where the background check occurs, the part of a gun that the gun doesn't work without is the receiver. And that is why the serial number is always on the receiver, because it doesn't matter the firearm. Barrels are consumable items. They are very much like a tire on a car. And so you run into the same issues if you're trying to track a barrel as you would if you were trying to track a set of Goodyears. You know, it's just something that comes and goes off of the firearm, and it's not regulated anywhere by the ATF or any place else. And so you run into these significant issues with commerce, significant issues just all across the board, and of course with tracking because there is no mechanism.
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And my question is for you, Mr. Cole, as well. So when I first read this bill, I read the section on page 4A2 that to encompass background check requirements. But if I'm listening to you and Ms. Hollywood correctly, you're saying that FFLs would not read that as giving authority or a requirement to actually perform a background check?
Mr. Cole.
Representative, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Yes, so the bill, the way it's currently written, the bill stipulates that a person cannot buy a barrel unless they can legally own a firearm. But the bill then makes no hook to be able to create a level of certainty for the seller. So even though the bill says that you can't sell a firearm to somebody who can't, a barrel to somebody who can't legally own a firearm, you can't access the background check system for that person. So there's literally nothing that a dealer could do except say, in good faith, just say, well, can you legally own a firearm? And then when you do that, where does that information go? Of course, well, you can't check with CBI on it. And so what happens? The information goes into your file cabinet where now the barrel is on a piece of paper, but guess what's not on the piece of paper? A serial number. So something happens, the barrel disappears, or maybe you sold 100 barrels that were the exact same barrel. Maybe you sold one. Like nobody knows the difference. Nobody knows the difference. It goes away. And there is literally nothing except a black hole a file cabinet with paper on it.
We have 30 seconds, Representative.
Quick follow-up. Thank you, Madam Chair. So what you're saying is that in order to access the background check system, you have to have some information related to a firearm, not to a firearm barrel?
Mr. Cole.
That's correct. Under federal law, you can't use the system to check this. This is not a regulated part. You can only use it to check the serialized part, the receiver.
Thank you all so much for your time and your testimony. We're going to move to our next panel. Ronald Dietz, William Lund Soderberg, Terrence Tomaya Makano, Ronald Murray May, Josiah Neerman, and Leif Singstedt. And if there's anybody else in person that would like to provide testimony in opposition to this bill, please come forward at this time. All right, let's start with Terrence Tomaya Mancano. You can correct my mispronunciation, but the floor is yours for 2 minutes.
Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you. You might need to speak closer to a microphone.
Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
My name's Terrence Toyamagal. I am a USCCA firearm instructor. I'm also a certified gunsmith with a associate's degree in firearm technology. I'm opposing from this bill, Senate 043. It's unconstitutional. There's no way to track any of these barrels at all. I heard the committee talk about Facebook Marketplace. You cannot go to Facebook Marketplace to find any of these firearm barrels. I've looked, I checked, I double checked. So what this is pretty much doing is violating our constitutional rights. These firearm barrels are interchangeable from one firearm to another, different models, different makes, and all that. For example, you have a PSA dagger barrel can be interchangeable to a Glock 19. You have a SARS B6 can be interchangeable to a CZ75. So I urge you guys to vote no on this bill and come to the conclusion that this is unconstitutional. So I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Ronald Dietz.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, can you hear me?
We can.
I can.
Thank you. My name is Ronald Dietz. I am speaking in opposition to this bill. As a father whose son committed suicide, I take exception and I'm very disturbed by using the excuse of suicide prevention as a reason to pass this bill. Building a gun from scratch is something that takes time, patience, and above average knowledge of how firearms work. Suicidal people are not going to take the time to do that. Guns do not cause people to commit suicide, and banning guns.
Ronald Dietz.
Sir, ma'am.
Can anybody else who is logged on please mute yourself so that our individual can complete their testimony? Thank you. You can proceed, Mr. Dietz.
Yes. Guns do not cause people to commit suicide, and banning guns does not eliminate suicide or reduce it, as anyone who is suicidal will always find another way. That was my experience. I locked up all my guns so that my son could not get them, and he simply found another way. He asphyxiated himself. We need to deal with the real cause of suicide, which is the antidepressant drugs and our broken mental health system. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Josiah Neerman.
Great point. Great point.
Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. Josiah Neerman, I co-own Salada Gun Shop in rural Colorado. Ron, thank you for the testimony. really proud to hear you speak today. I want to bring up a couple of things that Nephi Cole and Leslie Hollywood brought up and just echo what their sentiments are. Is the fact that it's still untraceable. As an FFL, we kind of know the track record of firearms in our system being tracked. We understand, how the records are going to be collected, how we're actually going to disseminate that information, when that information is going to need to be collected by law enforcement, and we comply, obviously. Without a barrel documentation being filed and serialized, it's going to be, again, like Nephi was saying, a black hole of documentation. I pulled up, I think it's page 6 or 5, line 16, Colorado Bureau of Investigation shall create a form for retail record keeping pursuant to this section. The documentation on our side to do that, it's great. We're going to document more stuff, just like we do with the FDD on pistol and handgun, revolver documentation when somebody actually does purchase one of those. But where is that documentation leading? And the fact that bill sponsors are continuing to say that this is not a registry. If it isn't a registry, then why do we need to collect that information when it isn't even searchable at that point? So I give the rest of my time.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Valentis.
My name is Catching Valentinas of Rocky Mountain Gun Owners. Speaking in opposition to this bill is set up as an opportunity to entrap FFLs, but also to profile gun owners. In House Bill 1037, a blue match analogy was shared, wherein law enforcement and our General Assembly are very interested in being able to figure out who bought a blue match. Anytime there's a case of arson and you find a blue match at the crime scene. That analogy translates perfectly to gun ownership, and plenty of law-abiding gun owners are going to be ensnared in this new regulation, and they're going to be harassed, they're going to be profiled, they're going to be investigated just because they own the same tool that was misused by someone else. Someone else who very likely did not go through an FFL to obtain their barrel or to obtain their firearm. This is just a system for creating redundant registries of gun owners in the state. This is an extension of all the other legislation that has been put forth. It is calculated as such. It is a lazy attempt, but it is destructive all the same because it is bureaucratic overreach, which is the objective of this chamber. I urge everyone on this panel to vote, everyone in this committee to vote against the bill and retain your dignity, please.
Thank you for your testimony. Members, do we have any questions for this panel of witnesses? Representative Luck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is for Mr. Neerman. So as an FFL, I'm wondering if I'm understanding correctly, this bill, if it were to pass into law, would require that before you could sell a barrel, you'd have to check an ID to make sure that the person is 18, and then somehow figure out whether that person is allowed to possess, receive, own, or purchase a firearm under state or federal law without being able to access the background check system. If that is a correct understanding, it seems to me that as an FFL, you'd probably not be inclined to sell barrels. Is that a fair assumption?
It is. Yep. Thank you.
Any other questions for this panel of witnesses? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Okay, the next panel is all remote participants. We're going to call Mark Tisdale, Jeannie Rush, Mike Stern, Alicia Garcia, Alf Mack, Seth Stern, Brandon Wark, and David Olson. If you could promote all of those online, please. Did you get all those, or do you need me to repeat them? Oh, thanks. I know that was a lot. And while those people are being promoted, we'll go ahead and get started with Miss Rush, since I see you ready, raring and ready to go.
I'm always ready. All righty, let's do this. First thing I'm complaining about is the safety clause. You do not have the right to keep using that to hide behind. We should have a right to vote on all these bills that you're doing when you're giving us the BOICA, because you're taking away the Second Amendment for one reason or another. Now, I'm going to read a couple of things. Number one, in bank robberies, Colorado. Number two, car theft. Number three, drug use and addiction. Number three, most dangerous state. Number four, property crimes, and it goes down. Now, as an estimate, 443,635 people and people aged 12 or older are sexually assaulted annually in the U.S. That's a big number. 1 in 5 women experience some type of rape, full or half, with over 1.9 million women reporting rape in a 12-month period, and maybe half don't even report rape. They don't even talk about it. They're embarrassed, they're humiliated, they're traumatized or threatened. This is, even if it's only half of that, 433,000 to 460,000. They keep talking about all these incidents of women being harmed. Nearly half of the women and more than 1 in 6 men experience some form of sexual or violent contact. That's in the whole population, okay? 13% of women, 6% of men will experience coercion, whether it's in schools and other places. The numbers just keep going on. 71,227 rapes were recorded by the police in 2024. If they were armed, properly trained, that wouldn't be the number. You are playing a horrible game of just attacking the Second Amendment when all the unlawful shooters are on drugs. You've got to stop using the lawful people and making us the villain, because we're
Thank
the
you,
ones that—
Ms. Rush. Thank you for your testimony.
Ask me questions. I'm here.
Mark Tisdale, we'll go to you next. State anybody that you represent in 2 minutes.
Hello, my name is Mark Tisdale. I'm here representing myself. I am against this bill. I am a 10-year veteran between the United States Navy and the United States Army. I am a graduate at Trinidad State's gunsmithing program. I'm an associate's of applied science and gunsmithing. This law is completely unenforceable. It is unconstitutional. And I've heard a lot of talk from the bill sponsors mentioning, oh, well, we can look at public safety. The Supreme Court has already told us that you cannot use interest balancing when you are coming up with laws that infringe on the Second Amendment. This is just a waste of Colorado taxpayer dollars and our time, in the fact that we are going to now have to spend both our tax dollars and then our private funds to fight this, to get this overturned, because it will not stand in the courts. The fact that we are acting as if this bill is enforceable in any way is insane. Because a barrel is an unregulated part, I can simply drive across the state line and this bill is not enforceable. That the FFL in that state won't even know that this bill is in effect. And to act like we are doing something to make people safer is just ridiculous. And we talk about ghost guns. Well, as a person mentioned earlier, that number has been greatly conflated because we've added in number of firearms that were recovered on scene of crimes where the serial number was obliterated. It was not a quote unquote ghost gun. Secondly, the idea of personally manufactured firearms is built into the heritage and history of our country. You have no proof, nothing to support through the history of our nation that shows anywhere where this kind of law has ever been put in place. So to do this, we are knowingly and intentionally violating the Constitution. This is a waste of everybody's time. The fact that we could be actually dealing with
Mr.
crime,
Tisdale, your time
but
has
no, we wanna
expired.
turn
Thank you.
private citizens into criminals.
Next, we'll go to Mike Stern. You'll have 2 minutes. Please state your name and anyone that you represent for the record. Mr. Stern, you're still on mute. There we go. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Mike Stern. I represent myself and I am against this bill. The way I look at this is it kind of goes with the same along the lines of purchasing a vehicle. You know, if you're going to go to the store, buy a vehicle, you expect to drive it off the lot and it's going to work for you the moment you leave that lot. And, you know, if this bill goes into place, you're essentially telling them, hey, we got to take the transmission out of this vehicle before you can go anywhere with it. You got to wait 3 extra days on top of it and pay an additional fee in order to operate this vehicle, and then also have it installed in your vehicle before you can drive it again. So to me, it just seems really redundant that you're just removing an essential part out of something to make it inoperable, and you're only punishing law-abiding citizens. Because a criminal will just easily drive across state lines, go get whatever he wants, come back over here, and continue, you know, committing crimes and doing that. You know, if someone has an evil thought, they're gonna continue to do that evil thought regardless of whatever laws are in place. Like drugs are illegal, people still do them. Drunk driving's illegal, people still do that too. Like there's really no way to put a stop to this. If someone wants to commit someone wants to be dangerous and harm people, they're gonna find a way to do it, regardless of this bill or not. And all you're doing is punishing the law-abiding citizen. Even if I need to go buy something, like if I got a competition coming up and the barrel that I have just happens to, you know, go out the wayside, I got to go get another one. I guess I can't shoot that competition. All the money that I just spent on that competition and all that time I put together to get out there, I can't do that. And there goes my fun time. And literally that's the only thing that you know I get to do on my free time is I get to go to the range. Otherwise I work 6 days a week. And you know, by putting this stipulation in, you're really just taking that away from the working man, because a lot of us look forward to being able to work on our own equipment and not have to take it to a gun store, not have to pay extra fees. And I'm 100% against this bill. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Stern. Next, we'll go to Alicia Garcia. I don't see her up. Oh, there she is. There you are, Ms. Garcia. 2 minutes. Thank you.
My name is Alicia Garcia. I'm pretty sure you can pronounce that correctly. So the Supreme Court has been very clear about what the Second Amendment protects. In the District of DC versus Heller, the court held that the Second Amendment secures an individual right to possess arms in common use for lawful purposes, especially in self-defense. In McDonald, that right was applied fully against the states, including Colorado. In NY State Rifle and Pistol Association in Bruin, the court adopted text, history, and tradition text. When the Second Amendment's plain text covers the conduct, the government must justify any restriction by pointing out to well-established historical analog, not by balancing interest or asserting that law is a good idea. The bill directly burdens the protected conduct. Barrels are not exotic accessories. They're essential components that keeps ordinary handguns and rifles, the very arms that Heller protects, and functional and safe for us to use as we the people. By forcing every barrel transfer through a federal license, criminalizing private transfers and even possession with intent to sell, and mandating detailed long-term record keeping on every buyer, the bill creates a new parts-based registry and erects barriers around the ordinary acquisition and maintenance of arms in common use. Under Bruin, Colorado must point to the historical tradition of treating basic components like barrels as regulated contraband, requiring intermediaries and records for every transfer, criminalizing intent to sell common parts. There is no such founding era or Reconstruction era tradition in this. You can look at Catano versus Massachusetts, confirms that even moderate defensive tools in common lawful use are protected arms, not subject to categorical bans simply because they are not new or disfavored. And that's exactly what you guys are doing here. You are demonizing an individual group of people based on irrational fears. There's something that somebody said earlier that absolutely disgusts me. It was, what is a small inconvenience to public safety? What inconvenience is this to you? What inconvenience is it to us? Extremely inconvenient. You are demonizing an entire group of individuals based on all of these people's irrational fears. We are tired of it. For these reasons, as someone who respects both public safety and constitutional limits, I urge you to reject this. We know you won't. We will be filing lawsuits against you.
Thank you. Mr. Mack, Alf Mack, we are sending you a request to be promoted as a panelist. Please click accept on that so that you can come and testify. We're going to skip over you for now and come back. Seth Stern is next. Mr. Stern is not here. We will move to Brandon Wark. Please state your name, anyone that you represent. You'll have 2 minutes.
Good day. My name is Brandon Wark, and I'm representing myself. This bill is another attempt to turn Coloradans into second-class citizens. Legislation like this means the people of Colorado do not have the same ability to exercise their rights as our neighbors in other states. This bill creates a de facto gun registry in every gun store across Colorado of every gun owner who wishes to legally purchase a firearm barrel. On page 4, as mentioned previously, the bill requires that firearm barrels cannot be purchased by someone that is, quote, prohibited from possessing, receiving, owning, or purchasing a firearm under state or federal law. Big question is, how is the gun dealer supposed to know this? How is the FFL supposed to know this? This bill will most likely lead to an end of legal gun barrel purchases in the state of Colorado because a gun dealer would not put themselves into a position to be liable if a person buys a barrel who is not legally allowed to. There is no way for a gun dealer to know if someone is legally able to own a gun without going through a background check through NICS and the CBI. This is not possible for a gun barrel. The system is not set up for that. If someone comes in to buy a gun barrel, how is the gun dealer supposed to know that they're legally allowed to possess a gun? It's just not possible at this point. Dealers cannot access criminal history databases or determine whether someone has a felony conviction, a domestic violence prohibition, or any other legal restriction that would prevent firearm ownership. Only the state can determine that. And for barrels, the state provides no mechanism to do that. Bill similar to a copy of California's SB 704, which requires a background check to purchase a barrel. The difference is that California actually built a background check system for barrel purchases. This bill does not, as was referenced with the zero fiscal note. This is a bad bill that deprives Coloradans of their natural right to self-defense and limits the ability of good people to defend themselves. And of course, most gun owners do not want to be put on any type of list, so I can guarantee many people who'd otherwise follow the law will ignore this and shop out of state. And ultimately, this bill will not help law enforcement solve any crime. Say a 3D printed gun is found in a crime. How is law enforcement officer supposed to know where this barrel was purchased? There's no identifying information on the barrel itself. There'd be no way to know that. All they'd have to tie it to a gun store somehow. And if somebody goes into a gun store, pays cash for the barrel, 3D prints the rest of the gun, this bill does nothing to stop any of that from happening. So please vote no.
Thank you so much, Mr. Work. Your time has expired. Alf Mack, welcome. Can you come off mute? And the floor is yours for 2 minutes.
Yes, this is just real simple. This is, again, one more infringement. Incrementally, laws like this, and there's been many, just to go against the U.S. Constitution and the Colorado Constitution. It's just another incremental infringement on our rights. And it's just another thing that we just have to say no to. It's as simple as that. I say no to this bill. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions for this panel? Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is for Mr. Work. Mr. Work, you have been following the Colorado legislature for some time, and I'm just wondering if, in light of the trends that you see, whether you have any concern that once the state has a bit more financial stability, that this will be turned into some sort of registry that the state does have as a database that can be searched.
Mr. Work.
That's a very valid concern, Representative. I really appreciate you bringing that up because as it is right now, this bill leaves a lot lacking in terms of what the bill sponsors are saying that this bill is to accomplish. Ultimately, if they want to accomplish what they're setting out to, they would need to create a state registry where gun dealers, FFLs would have to, process a background check through CBI, put them in a system, log everything, track it, and then create a statewide database that law enforcement can use potentially with either a serialized barrel requirement or just looking up the information in the system. So yeah, there's very, very valid concerns. We've seen this incrementalism and this step-by-step dismantling of our Second Amendment rights here in Colorado. And of course, this bill, it's very interesting, Representative. I'm really glad you brought that up, because this bill does some things, but it definitely doesn't go very far. And I have to wonder, as you mentioned, without the ability to have a fiscal note because of the tight budget of the state this year, was there more planned for this type of bill, and will there be more planned in the future? This is just the first step, it seems, because ultimately we can almost see what can happen, right? Somebody 3D prints a firearm, it's used, this law is cited, but is not actually able to help in the investigation, and then we got to take it one step further, and that's how our rights get dismantled, one step at a time as they move further along. And we've heard the bill sponsors talk about previous legislation and legislation this year around 3D printed firearms, and this is just another step in that direction to totally track every gun purchase and every part purchase of a firearm component in the state of Colorado. So I really appreciate the question and appreciate the attention to this.
All right, I'm not seeing any other questions. Thank you all so much for your testimony. Next up, we're going to hear from folks that are either in an amend or neutral position. Both are registered remotely, Charles Daldry and Trent Chappell. If there's anybody here in person that wishes to provide testimony in a neutral or amend position, please come forward at this time. Mr. Chappell, please come off mute and the floor is yours for 2 minutes.
Yes, I started out this as neutral, tried to give you the benefit of the doubt. Upon listening to this bill is ridiculous. Swapping out barrels. I'm gonna start as a teenager. Shotgun barrels were swapped out between my buddies and things on a regular basis. One of us would go hunting for one thing and another person would go hunting for something else. Number two, you're talking about ghost guns, etc. If anybody who's smart enough to get a ghost gun and make it work, they're going to figure out how to bypass this law. It's going to do nothing.
Sir, I'm going to stop you for just a moment. If you're listening to the sound from committee, maybe try and turn
that better
down. Yeah, okay, because it was sounding like you were testifying from outer space. Okay, do you want to give it a try and we can start your time over?
Is that better?
Oh my goodness, yes. Okay, we're starting your 2 minutes over if you want to start your time, okay?
Okay, all right.
Okay. Oh, no, we're back in outer space.
Okay, I've been listening to outer space all the way through. What can I do? Try to solve that. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Again, I tried to give you guys benefit of the doubt. This bill is ridiculous. As a teenager, my friends and I would swap out shotgun barrels on a regular basis so one guy could hunt quail, another guy could hunt ducks. If you're intelligent enough to get a ghost gun going, you're intelligent enough to bypass the system that you have going on. It also says on there, firing a projectile, shot, or quote unquote bullet. Well, that to me could actually step all the way down to a spit gun, spit wads. So it's so vague. It's again, ridiculous. It also is, it said permanently attached. Well, if you can unscrew the barrel and replace it, all firearms have replaceable barrels. You guys wrote this up, whoever wrote it up. My interpretation is it's intentionally vague. It's time that you make a clear, concise bill that is constitutional and is not going to cost this state thousands and thousands, if not millions of dollars. And then to have it turn around and be sued out of existence. That's what I got to say.
Thank you very much. And then Mr. Charles Daltrey, I believe that our tech folks are trying to elevate you to a panelist so that you can testify. If you're able to accept that, we'd certainly love to hear testimony from you today. Okay. All right. We're going to move on to our last panel then. Oh, I'm so sorry. Does anybody have any questions for this witness? Okay. Seeing none, thank you so much for your time, sir. All right. Last panel will be Julie Ort, Cheryl Wilson, Pat Rocheffer, and Anna Robbins. If there's anybody else with us today that wishes to provide testimony in support of the bill, please come forward at this time. Welcome back.
Thank you. Pat Rocheffer is in another committee. I just texted her to let her know to come over.
Okay, perfect. Would you like to kick us off?
Sure. Thank you. Okay. My name is Julie Ort. I live in Douglas County and I support this bill. I am old enough to remember when a prevailing gun owner ethos was, I purchased a firearm for self-defense and I hope I never have to use it. It was a conservative, honor-driven posture centered on a healthy respect for the lethality of guns. In 1981, I was 13 when a homeowner shot me and rendered me permanently paralyzed during a toilet papering prank. This was 3 years before Bernie Goetz would open fire on 4 Black teenagers in a New York City subway. In both instances, I recognized even then a gravitational shift away from shooting people as a last option to our modern day shoot first and ask questions later culture. With today's mass shootings and daily tallies of gun carnage, we tragically live with the consequences of our inaction. SB 43 is a preemptive measure. 3D printed firearms are a burgeoning enterprise with their own gravitational shift towards homemade, unpredictable, piecemeal, and unbound by manufacturing standards and regulations lethality. A niche hobby creative endeavor that has morphed into criminal enterprises that seek to usurp the role of the ATF and FFLs in ensuring lawful sales and transfers. And we are again at a dangerous inflection point. Regulating detached firearm barrels wisely anticipates the proliferation of a relatively cheap, universally accessible underground 3DPF market. One that could usurp an entire industry and place deadly weapons in the hands of virtually anyone. SB 43 affirms responsible, accountable gun manufacturing and ownership. Please support this bill.
Thank you so much. Welcome. Press that little gray button and the floor will be yours.
My name is Cheryl Wilson. I'm representing myself and I'm in favor of this bill. I just returned from Honolulu where I met with the chief of police and I talked to him about gun violence there. And I said, well, you're an island. It should be easier to control. He said, the big problem right now are the 3D printed guns. And if they had a bill like this that could keep people from being able to get the barrel, then it might help save even 1 or 2 lives. And that's all we should care about is saving lives, not about if it's sporting for something or, I mean, this is the whole thing. But after talking to the police chief, it made me realize that this is a huge problem. And this bill would put some teeth into allowing law enforcement to pursue any kind of charges if they found something. The other thing I want to say, and this can go to almost any of the bills, I keep hearing law abiding. And how people's rights are being infringed on. Everybody is born law abiding. We can't be sure that every person in this room will still be law abiding tomorrow. So I wish they would quit using that term to defend their so-called gun rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome. You made it. Do you want us to come back to you? Okay.
All right. Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Anna Robbins, and I'm a student from University of Colorado Boulder. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm here to discuss this bill through an economic lens. My analysis of this bill approaches it from an economic perspective, specifically through the concept of negative externalities. When a transaction imposes costs on third parties who are not involved in the exchange, the market outcome may be inefficient. Those spillover costs are known as externalities. Firearm violence presents a clear example of this issue. Beyond the human toll of these incidents, beyond the human toll, these incidents impose substantial economic costs, including medical expenses, law enforcement resources, and lost productivity. These costs are largely borne by victims, families, and communities, not by the original buyers and sellers of firearm components. Firearm barrels are a necessary component for a firearm to function. However, they can often be purchased separately from complete firearms and historically have faced fewer regulatory requirements. This creates a gap in oversight. When critical components are transferred without documentation or licensed intermediaries, traceability is reduced and diversion risks may increase. Senate Bill 26043 addresses this gap by requiring firearm barrel transfers to occur through federally licensed dealers and by establishing record-keeping requirements. Importantly, the bill does not prohibit ownership. Instead, it increases accountability and traceability in a targeted way. From an economic standpoint, the bill functions as a partial internalization mechanism. By modifying costs through license transfers and documentation, it helps align private incentives with broader social costs. The efficiency of the policy depends on whether these compliance costs are outweighed by reductions in external harm. Senate Bill 26043 represents a focused attempt to address a documented externality while preserving lawful access. Evaluated through an economic lens, it reflects a targeted regulatory approach rather than a broad restriction. For these reasons, Senate Bill 26043 should be adopted. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. We have two other individuals, I believe one online and one in person, that wanted to provide testimony. And so we'll call them now and then we'll let you wrap up this testimony. So Mr. Aaron Lewis and Mr. Seth Stern. Mr. Stern, welcome. Please come off mute and the floor is yours for 2 minutes.
I apologize if my voice doesn't come across great. I'm at home with a cold. I don't know exactly how I ended up on the support panel because I don't support any of this. The fantasies the state majority seems to carry about the efficiency of government preventing all ills to society has just been proven delusional time and time again. And as much as I empathize with the senator from New York, back when the news of what had happened started to land, it's gone to a point where, unfortunately, we're infringing upon the rights of the law-abiding, which I don't really care what you other panelists had to say about the subject. We will continue to use the phrase law-abiding because we're not the ones committing crimes. Statistically, it's those with severe mental health issues and gang affiliations, which I can't imagine why we would want to go after law-abiding gun owners instead of two groups of people not known for following the laws. This is not going to do anything but continue Colorado's slow slide into one of the top 10 most violent or most criminal states in the union. It's been real great what happened to our once purple state, and now that it's drowning under the weight of the blue hole in the center of it. This isn't going to do anything positive, but I know in this echo chamber, nothing actually changes. It's all dependent on which lobbies are paying the bill. So, it'll probably go through, and then we're left hoping that the governor proves that he's still not the worst of you and vetoes it. I'm done.
All right. And we did call Mr. Aaron Lewis, I think 2 or 3 times now. So we're going to move on. Ms. Rothschild, welcome. You can close us out.
Thank you. My name is Pat Rothschild, and my words today are my own. SB 26043 is an important piece of legislation that is needed in this world where there has been an explosion of 3D printed firearms and firearm parts. It appears that the firearm barrel is one part that is not easily produced by a 3D printer though. So those who cannot purchase firearms legally and want to print them for themselves will still need to procure a barrel to go along with the other parts in order for the firearm to work as a firearm. A few weeks ago, I was at my son-in-law's house. He has a 3D printer, and my 8-year-old grandson was showing me how easy it is to print something. He just needs the code from the computer and voila, an 8-year-old can print things. Is this really what we want? 8-year-olds able to produce a working firearm. All they need is the code and one of those 3D printers. I think not. This bill does not infringe on anyone's right to own and bear arms, just on their right to own a firearm barrel. So constitutional arguments do not even come close to applying. This bill just requires a federally licensed firearm dealer to report the sale of a firearm barrel and maintain these records for at least 5 years. Our firearm dealers already have requirements to maintain records. Any business in the United States must maintain records. They can do this with little issue. This bill also makes it illegal for a person, not an FFL, a person, to be in possession of a firearm barrel with the intent of selling or transferring it to another person. Please vote yes on SB 26043.
Thank you very much. Members, do you have any questions for this final panel? Representative Luck and then Representative Bottoms.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two questions, one for Ms. Ort and one for the CU student. My question for you, Ms. Ort, is there's nothing in this bill that I read that actually addresses the ghost gun problem. The way that I read this bill, an individual can come forward to an FFL and say, hey, I want a barrel for a 30-06, right? And they fill out this particular form and all is done. There is nothing that requires the FFL to know whether that's a barrel for a manufactured, a formally manufactured 30-06 or something that was 3D printed or handcrafted at home. So how do you make the connection in this bill that says that this bill is actually going to stop ghost gun creation?
Ms. Ort.
First of all, I would say that it's really addressing individuals who are trafficking in barrels, so not through the FFL. So we're talking about the FFL's responsibility, but we also have to look at the market that would be going on behind the scenes. So it's trying to address that. So putting it through the FFL, so setting a standard that these barrels go through an FFL. I think also going back, if you could repeat again part of your question, I just want to make sure you were asking how this would affect it again. Can you, this specific?
Representative Luck?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So if I understood you correctly, the crux of your argument was that this law will keep ghost guns out. And my question is, how do you make that connection? How do you make that leap? Because once the barrel exits the gun shop, there is no knowledge that anyone has as to where that barrel will end up in terms of that person's weaponry, right? Will it be a manufactured item or will it be something that they themselves created?
Right, but it does give us an opportunity to trace it back, right? We have a record. So if we find that there is a propensity of somebody who's dealing in these or these 3D guns are showing up in crimes, we can actually go back and find that person where they purchased it. So we can also have a record so we can trace that where the barrel is coming from. Isn't that, I mean, that's a big part of this, right? In that crime guns, we know within 1 to 3 years, if they're showing up, that they're usually a trafficked gun. So our FFLs are a great opportunity. We don't, all our FFLs, most of them are operating within the law, but we know that there are some that don't. So that's important to be able to track where those barrels are coming from and how 3D printed guns are getting their barrels.
Actually, how are they going to
Thank you,
do
Madam
that?
Chair, and thank you for that answer. My question for you, ma'am, you had given the economic analysis related to the cost that harm using of firearms impacts on society. Did you do a similar economic analysis of the benefits of firearms, or did you do an economic analysis of what this will do to firearm industry in the event that people can't get barrels or have to go through this mechanism? Did you do any
I could
additional
barely hear you.
look at
You were
this
breaking up a
situation?
lot.
Thank you.
If you can just state your name real quick for us, and then you
my
can
name
go.
is Anna Robbins.
I'm sorry,
And I
a little bit.
didn't do specifically an analysis on
Yeah,
those
that's
parts.
a little
I
bit
focused
better.
kind of more on the negative externality of firearms in general,
Wait,
but not
now I
as
can't
much
hear
of the
you.
positive benefits of it.
Representative Bottoms with our last question.
Yes, this question is for the testimony second in from my right. You used the statement in your testimony, exact quote, our so-called gun rights. How do you perceive the Constitution says that I have the right to keep and bear arms and that there shall be no infringement? Because I think those are my so-called gun rights. How do you respond to that?
Ms. Wilson.
I am listening to what a lot of the experts have said. I am not an expert on the Constitution, but I have seen where gun laws have been passed to try and help protect people who are just living their normal lives and have been shot and killed.
Yes, one follow-up, but we only have 20 seconds. Representative Bottoms.
So the question was actually my so-called gun rights, my constitutional gun rights. The Constitution says I have these rights, and the Constitution says no infringement. What do you answer to, because you said so-called gun rights, what does that mean to you in reference to the Constitution?
Ms. Wilson.
I have seen, and these people have a right to live their life, and so you have to balance that out. The Constitution was written so long ago, before the forefathers couldn't even have imagined what is that.
Thank you so much to this panel for your time and your testimony. With that, the witness phase is now closed.
They didn't answer the question.
No, like I said.
Representative Froelich, do you want to move your amendment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Amendment L14 to Senate Bill 43.
Second.
Ooh, way to go, Carter. Tell us about the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is at the request of the gunsmithing in
This amendment. I am curious, I don't really know, are instructors FFLs? Do you know?
Representative Froelich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not that I understand them to be. It is
Representative.
that they, that the school will be, but the school would be purchasing the barrels from an FFL, and then they are allowed to transfer them to students for the purposes of education.
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that. So if I'm understanding correctly, the instructor would be subject to these rules, but the student will not be.
Representative Froelich.
Thank you. The bill and this amendment and the whole point is when these transfers and sales are taking place. So this allows for the transfer from the person who purchased it, which is the accredited gunsmithing program, to the students.
Representative Carter, and then Bottoms.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the sponsors and thank you for bringing this amendment
I just want to express that as we've been going through this journey, some of the groups that have been contacting me have been these colleges, are these community colleges specifically related to these gunsmithing programs. And so I just want to say thank you for bringing those community colleges, and I appreciate the work.
Chair, the amendment, who is it trying to protect?
My understanding of the amendment is that it's protecting the programs that do gunsmithing to allow them to continue to operate in the same way an automobile maintenance program would.
Representative Bottoms.
So why did you limit it to just one tiny small group of gunsmithers? If it's protection of gunsmithing, why don't we just allow it for all gunsmithers? That would seem more constitutional.
Representative Froelich.
Thank you. This is in acknowledgement of a program within a education setting, and we feel like that's pretty cool. It's very different from an individual in their basement.
In general sense, I don't know who gunsmiths in their basement or not. I'm saying gunsmiths in general. Most of them are not in their basement. Protection. Why would you limit it to just one small group?
Representative Brown.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Bottoms. I appreciate your questions and your interest in this particular aspect of the bill. I would just say that, I think we all recognize that in many cases, for many different situations, when we are educating students for the purposes of a particular profession, there are different kinds of restrictions or regulations that might be at play. And so this is a recognition of the unique role that these community colleges play. And it is similar to an amendment that we added on 1144.
Last question, Representative Bottoms.
So let me get this right. You're carving out students in gunsmithing so that they can learn something that you just have said, and many of the witnesses have said, is egregious and dangerous to our society, but we're going to teach this to young people and let them be carved out, but theoretically they can't use it when they become adults because it becomes dangerous then? I'm not following that line of reasoning.
Representative Brown.
So thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Bottoms. I don't think that I have said that this is dangerous necessarily. What I have said is that that ghost guns are a problem in terms of criminal activity, and my co-prime has mentioned the challenges of death by suicide. In this particular case, obviously there are different standards and different requirements that we use in higher education than we do in for a regular person who might be purchasing a firearm or a barrel. And so that's really the intent of this, is to recognize the unique role of
Rep. Brooks, was that a hand stretch or a question? Okay, wonderful. See no further questions. Hearing none, Amendment L14 is adopted. Committee, any further amendments?
Oh my God.
Seeing none, the amendment phase is now closed. Bill wrap up, and you're welcome to move the bill to the Committee of the Whole, Representative Froelich.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 43 as amended to the committee of the whole with a favorable recommendation. Evening, we started committee last Monday at this time at 3:30. So we are feeling pretty good about our discussion today in terms of its impact on our tiredness. But, you know, we hear a lot about responsible gun ownership. I think this is well within the same purview as folks who want to promote responsible gun ownership. Let's not buy guns in the Walmart gun barrels in the Walmart parking lot or off of Facebook, or let's go through FFLs and the proper procedures. It was interesting to hear so much advocacy for background checks from the same groups of folks who have resisted efforts in that regard. This isn't a cure-all for gun violence, but it's a sensible measure, and we ask for an aye vote.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I really appreciate the testimony, or sorry, the attention of the committee. I appreciate the testimony from the witnesses who showed up today. I just want to remind everybody that in 2022, a shooter opened fire at Club Q in Colorado Springs, killing 5 people, wounding 25 more. He used 2 ghost guns, one of which was equipped with a custom stock and a magazine for an AR-15 style rifle. And in 2023, a 17-year-old shot 2 school administrators before dying by firearm suicide. The gun he used was a ghost gun printed with a 3D printer. So those are just 2 examples of the deadly cost of easy access to ghost guns and really what this is all about. We know that ghost gun recoveries have increased dramatically over, since about 2019. They've increased by about 350%. And now they are ghost gun recoveries rank about 13 per month. So this is a sensible public safety measure that will help to make sure that people can still buy firearm or barrels when they need them. It doesn't ban firearm barrels. It doesn't require serial numbers. It doesn't create a registry. It doesn't require a background check, but it does make reasonable steps that will protect public health, protect citizens from dangerous criminal activity, and hopefully save lives. And so with that, we'd ask for an aye vote.
Representative Froelich.
And thank you for indulging me, Madam Chair. I do want to thank the folks who came out and who joined us online for the discussion this evening. I thought if I didn't have my notes that I would still remember, but I did just want to say one thing about our efforts that really are related to suicide. 9 out of 10 folks who attempt suicide without the use of a gun will survive. And 9 out of 10 folks who attempt suicide with a gun will end their lives. This is an integral part. Access to guns is an integral part of our fight against suicide and gun death in Colorado. And ghost guns present an opportunity and access to folks who with a cooling off period might make a different decision. So it's part of why we're asking for an aye vote.
Any closing comments, members? Representative Brooks.
Chair, thank you. So I'm going to just kind of step back a little bit from what I believe might be assumed to be my opposition. in terms of, I don't believe that for me, my most effective concern when it comes to 3D printing, and we've already seen some legislation in that space to try to address that. Legislating a little bit in the dark on some of these items, and trying to get out ahead, assuming that there are issues, and getting out ahead in some spaces that aren't entirely yet discussed. Certainly, the issues that I have questions with, these federal law treats barrels as ordinary components. The inability to track, the inability to be able to really, also with interstate commerce, I believe that this is an issue. We start legislating across all different states. We're going to have patchwork almost in the same way that we're kind of struggling in the AI space. I believe there are some true interstate commerce issues here that need to be resolved. I think that these are questions that we probably ought to be slowing down on and looking at, and ensuring that we're not getting out ahead of ourselves just in terms of trying to chase an idea, and try to chase an idea in the name of gun violence, because we know that that's always going to get under that topic, that subheader, a certain amount of support. I think that there's a granularity to this that we need to be looking at that we're ignoring right now, and I'm uncomfortable with. I will be a no, as I expect you probably thought that already, but I hope that it's for reasons different than the off-the-shelf no that you thought, because I think there's just more work that needs to be done in this space.
Other closing comments? Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too am going to be a no, unsurprised. Right, there are other policies in this space that I'm just going to ideologically be against. But this particular policy, I don't see the nexus of how it actually works as written. I think we've heard from the FFLs, you have the mechanism to implement it properly, and it's going to leave us in a situation where we actually can't sell these barrels. I think that's a fair rebuke. I think that's a fair, retort and question of, if indeed the background system requires them to implement a receiver number, a serial receiver number. They don't have one, so they can't actually do a check to see if these folks are, as the bill requires, not prohibited from possessing, receiving, owning, or purchasing a firearm. If it were me as the FFL, I simply wouldn't enter into that space. I wouldn't put my entire business at risk for selling one component part. And that concerns me because there are people who change their barrels regularly, right? All of our shooters who are in competitive sports. And so what are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to drive to Kansas or Utah or Wyoming or New Mexico and get those barrels? And is that a fair burden to put on them? And then the next question is, okay, well, we are hearing that there is this crime that is being done by ghost guns. Again, I don't see the nexus between this, because it's not as if an owner has to come in the FFL and show the weapon that they're going to replace a barrel on and say, this is what it is, do it for me. It's simply, I'm purchasing a component part and I'm leaving your store and you have no idea what I'm attaching that to. It could be a gun that a receiver I bought from that same FFL last week, or it could be a ghost gun that I printed at home. We don't actually know. And so attaching that to the ghost gun conversation, I don't see how that is actually impacting it, because they're still being able to purchase those barrels. And then what they use them on, we have no idea. And then the piece that is as relates to the record keeping. Okay, so So to the point of the FFLs keep a record, but it's stored in their own filing system. And there's no mechanism by which at this present juncture, CBI or law enforcement can access that unless perhaps, and they go to the different FFLs within 5-mile radius and ask all of them, hey, do you have this particular type of barrel that you sold in the last, the defendant, unless they know who they suspect has done it, how do they search those records? What do they search for? It's not like the barrels are being serialized such that they can go and say, hey, did you sell barrel 255? And if they can't do that, then what's the point of keeping those records, and what's the point of subjecting them and law-abiding folks to this additional level of scrutiny and requirement and inability to access? It does concern me, especially in light of what I've been told is a desire to eliminate firearms from our state. If that is a desire to do that, this bill helps to facilitate it, because if people can't buy replacement parts, if they can't buy barrels, they can't maintain the weapons they already own. And so I really am concerned. I'm concerned that I don't.
That's weird.
Yeah. Well, it looks like they're having technical difficulties.
Yeah. So what were you saying? I was talking about how are they going to actually track all of these things, and you were saying something and then you stopped.
Oh, just that it's been brought up like many times, and no one has really listened to it. Well, that stinks. We won't know what was going to happen. What if they're going to adopt it or not?
Adopt what, the gun law? Or the barrel law?
Because they were just about to announce if they were going to vote for it.
Vote
whenever
for
it
what?
just all of a sudden stopped.
What are they going to be voting for? That's what I'm confused about.
If to actually pass it fully or not, and put it into action.
The barrel law?
Yeah.
Hmm.
So we can just hope maybe they don't, but it looks like they probably will.
Yeah.
So I guess all we can do is end it here and say we hope the best, but it looks like it definitely looks like we're going to have a loss here. So to everyone out there, this is Big Haas and this is Kanan. I guess we'll be seeing you next time.
Yep. See you next time.